Welcome to the Lead Gen Leaders Podcast, connecting you to the leading minds in home improvement to discuss all things marketing and leadership. And now, your host, Kyle Powers.
Welcome to the Lead Gen Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Powers. Today's episode is going to be fun and informative. If you have ever thought about or are doing radio, this is the episode for you. My guest today has spent literally his entire life in and around radio advertising, growing up with a father who owned a radio station and then later on becoming an account executive and then a sales manager when it comes to radio stations. He started his own company called First Person Advertising in 2008, and he focuses solely on home improvement and home services, lead generation when it comes to radio. Welcome to the show, truly a lead gen leader, Richard Oatman. Hello, Richard.
Hello.
How you doing this morning?
I'm all right, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, I'm really excited to have you on the show this morning and talk about what I feel is something that I certainly, paid the dumb tax and made the mistakes through my career of being a marketing director, but that is the 6 stupid mistakes that business people make when buying radio advertising, and of course then how to fix them. But Richard, before we really get into talking about buying radio and making it successful for your home improvement company, could you maybe give the listeners a little background, kind of who you are and what you do?
You bet, Kyle. So I started selling radio fresh out of college. So I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, 21-year-old young man that was going to set the world on fire. And I had the good fortune of starting out at a radio station in Wichita, Kansas, that was by the call letters KFDI radio. And KFDI was kind of the, if you will, the community radio station. It was a heritage country music station. And we made we made our living by selling direct to businesses. We didn't do a whole lot of advertising agency business, but we'd go out, knock on doors, sell advertising to business owners. And so what I learned early on in media sales is business owners are kind of funny about one thing. They want it to work. They're not into buying radio just, to create art. And so what I learned really fast was, as a media salesman, is, if it doesn't work, I'm not going to feed my family, because these very nice, very polite business people, I'd come in and they'd shake my hand and say, hey, thanks for trying, Richard, but it didn't work. So I learned pretty quickly how to create schedules and how to create commercials that created a response. There's a right way and a wrong way to use radio. And if you use it the wrong way, it's probably not going to work. But if you do it right, which again, I worked there for close to 10 years and really kind of honed my system, if you will, then it works. It's magical the way it works. So after that, I moved to Kansas City, and I was a sales manager here for a while. And after some ownership changes at the radio station, I decided to start my own advertising agency. Using, and what I did different was using the way I look at media and the way I look at radio to bringing that to business owners. And that's certainly different than what the conventional way that most advertising agencies will look at buying a schedule or putting together a media plan. So, been going 12 years. We get some fantastic results for our clients. And so, so far so good. I'm still feeding my family with it. So we're pretty happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the name of that company that you own, the advertising agency for radio?
You bet. First Person Advertising. And the reason I named it First Person, just real quick, is to me, and what I learned in all my years in media, is the most effective type of advertising is done in the first person. So 99% of the advertising I do for my clients is either a endorsement from a local radio talent, or I put the owner on the air talking about his or her business, because that's very powerful for people to get to know the owner through advertising. And then third is customer testimonials. So it's that three types of first-person advertising that I see are head and shoulders more effective than any other type of advertising that that you can do out there. It certainly is better than some generic announcer voice, saying right now you can get a special offer on, their family-owned business since 1936, and those type of commercials just I don't find to be.
Sure, absolutely. I can understand that. So that's a kind of neat understanding how you came up with your name to really reflect what your values are and what you believe. So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
Well, Richard, let's get right into it. So mistake number one, what is that you see that contractors make when buying radio?
The biggest mistake I see, Kyle, and that's I put it as mistake number one because I mean, we could end the podcast here because I think this is the biggest thing, and that is buying 30-second commercials. So in radio, the standard units are 30s and 60s, and the dirty little secret is that radio stations want to sell 30s. And the reason they want to sell 30s is because a lot of radio stations view commercials, now this is really surprising, as clutter. It just drives me crazy when I hear that word clutter, because it's not clutter. It's it's a business owner's story, but they look at it as clutter. So they can run few or more 30-second commercials and sell more inventory at 30 seconds at a time than you can 60. Now, I've been doing this all of my life, and I still have difficulty writing an effective 30-second commercial. It's about 90 words, and it's enough room to just basically get out your name, what your product is, and then ask people to, here's my phone number. And beyond that, you really can't do much with a 30-second commercial. So with a 60, now the line that people will hear from a radio station about a 60-second commercial is, people get bored with the commercial and they lose interest and they tune out. No, all of that is absolutely bull. And when I say that, I have no scientific study to prove it, but I know that every single one of my clients runs 60-second commercials, and none of them say, my customers are constantly calling me saying they get sick of listening to my commercials. It's just a radio station line to discourage people from buying 60s. The crazy thing is 60s and 30s with a radio station are usually the same price. So you get, again, I'm no economist, but you get double the amount of advertising for about the same price, or maybe even 20% more. Sometimes they'll price the 60s at a little higher. So double the amount of time for 20% more money, worst case. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. But the 60 allows you to set up a problem, to show how your product or service solves that problem, then talk about the benefits, and then do a call to action. There's just much more time to sell. And that's all advertising is. It's selling. And it's so difficult to sell in 30 seconds. So that's my number one biggest mistake that I would like to, if I could change the world, I would change the way business owners do that and never buy another 30-second commercial again from a radio station. Buy 60s, because it's just much more effective, and it's just it will give you so much more of a chance to pitch your product.
And so what would you say to those little filler commercials, the little 10-second stuff and the little blurbs that they say, well, you're going to get, 1 million more mentions a month if you, and I know a little later on we're going to be talking about in the next step here, the packages, but when they try to throw all these little things in there, what are your thoughts on those, really short snippets?
Well, that's an excellent question, Kyle, because that's become kind of a fad in media buying, is, buying 10s and 15s. I don't necessarily have a problem with them as a support of your 60-second backbone. I mean, think of it when you're you're investing with your 401k, and they talk about your core holdings. The 60-second commercial should be your core holding. That should be the backbone of your schedule. And then if you want to pepper in some, 5-second billboards or little 10-second blurbs or something like that, if you can buy the 60s and enough 60s to be effective and then support it with those short little blurbs, great. But do not make the backbone of your schedule those little blurbs, because you just aren't going to create enough frequency to get people to cause people to take action.
Sure.
Now, if you're just into branding And I mean, if literally you know, as a business owner, you can say, I'm going to take this advertising budget of mine. Don't care if anybody calls me. I'm just going to spend it and just hope that everyone remembers my name because of it. Great, buy 10s and 15s if you're not expecting any kind of a result. But if you know, I've yet to meet that client. I would, if anyone listening is that type of client, please call me, because I've never had the luxury of not being accountable to my clients for results. But most people that I meet are like, yeah, we want the phone to ring, you know, if we're going to spend this money, and that's what you know, that's what 60s are going to do, and 15s are, in my mind, they're somewhat of a waste of money. Back to the economics real quick. The 15-second commercial will cost about half of what the 60-second commercial at most radio stations. It might be 40%. So again, you're getting 75% less time, but you're paying about half the cost. Again, I barely made it out of Econ 101 in college, but I know that's a bad deal.
Absolutely. And a little personal story just on myself here when it comes to, you know, branding on radio. There's a lot of, you know, advertising people outside of our industry, essentially outside of the home improvement space that, you know, have really sold some places that I worked at on the idea of branding before I got there that, hey, if we just be on the radio long enough and you spend enough and you're there and you really own that eventually when someone thinks Windows, you know, or thinks this product, they're going to buy, you know, you're going to be top of mind to them. And so I was, you know, working at a place that they had done radio for like a year, and they had never really put a call to action because it was just that branding. But they were sold on such the idea that eventually, magically, people will just start calling because you're going to be the known brand. And, you know, I really debated with, you know, ownership that, hey, we really, you know, this is really tying up our budget, that we've got to get a call to action. We have to see immediate results off of these commercials. And of course, the advertising person said, oh, well, you know, that's going to be just like drugs. You're going to get addicted to the leads you get. I hope so. I hope you can supply enough that we're addicted and we just keep buying more and more, because that'll make sure we stay with you if you can get us the leads. And sure enough, we put together, and I believe it was a 60-second commercial that had a, you know, big call to action and, you know, sale and everything. And we capitalized, you know, on that. And that's what we, you know, ran its course with. And we had some results, you know, with radio then at that point. So just kind of interesting that, again, at the entry of the show, I said, I've certainly paid the dumb tax when it comes to radio, so it's good to hear the good things to do.
As you and I were talking, that's where most advertising people and business owners get it flipped upside down. They think if they do enough branding, they'll sell some product. In my world, I think if you sell enough and consistently enough, and you're constantly selling with your marketing, then you'll brand yourself. Yeah. So the main goal should be selling, and branding is kind of an added benefit. It's not the other way around. It's not the main goal, let's brand, and, oh, but, you know, if we sell a few things, hey, that's great. It's exact.
Yeah, you can brand yourself broke too, so.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so that kind of brings us to mistake number 2.
Yeah, so mistake number 2, I call it is buying packages. Now, what a package is, I'm sure every business owner has had a radio that's listening, has had a radio rep come stumbling in their office saying, well, we've got this great package that our sales manager put together. You can buy 24 commercials and run them before the end of the month, and it's only, you know, $862, and, you know, that's a really good rate, and we think you should buy it. And, you know, my thing is, if you do buy one of those, the radio station should send you like a bottle of wine and a big thank you card, because what you're doing is you're buying advertising the way they want you to buy it. You're not buying it necessarily for what's best for you. So I would avoid those packages. They're generally consisting of broad rotators that rotate, you know, 6A to 7P. It's impossible to create frequency. There's not enough commercials in them. It's kind of let me stick my toe in the water and see if it works. And that's all wrong. I mean, you might as well write a check out to Richard Oatman for the same amount and just put it in the mail to me, and I'll send you a thank you card, because it's almost impossible to advertise like that and see any kind of direct results from it. So, you know, I always tell business owners, I've got a really good phone script, and we're going to role play it here. And And I'll tell you what, Kyle, you see the script in front of you, I think. And
Yep.
so I'm going to be the rep. Okay. Hello, Kyle. We have a great package available for you this week. Would you like to buy it?
No.
Exactly. So that's the script I want business owners to listen to. Don't buy packages. So it works much better. I've got a client, Kyle, he's a roofer up in Detroit, and he was doing a lot of this package buying. He wanted to advertise, but he wasn't advertising. I mean, he wasn't doing anything consistent. He didn't have any kind of a plan, but he would, he had a relationship with a couple of radio reps, so they'd come in every once in a while and he'd purchase this package or that package and never really saw any kind of result. When he contacted me and we sat down and we put together a comprehensive plan and started advertising the right way on a consistent basis with 60-second commercials, his advertising just absolutely took off. And he did well in 2020. In a pandemic year, he did over $1 million in radio leads. And he's crazy about tracking those leads, but over $1 million in sales in just radio leads. So it's very, very powerful when you do it right and stop buying those packages.
Yeah, and just kind of going back to my own experience at being a marketing director and dealing with these reps, some of those packages seem like the right thing to do. They seem, that it makes sense that, hey, because you do this and we can add this and then you got this and then we can reduce it to that and, all that kind of stuff. And then, it makes sense. So definitely love that mistake because and just how to get over it. And so what do you think about people creating essentially their own package?
Well, that's what you need to do with radio is when you buy a schedule, you create your own package, you create your own schedule. And so, that is done on a comprehensive long-term basis with some consistency and some forethought. It shouldn't be done spur of the moment. Again, remember that person sitting in front of you is a sales person. So they're trying to sell you the inventory that they need to get sold. It's not necessarily the right one for you. But yes, as far as creating your own package, that happens during the buying process of media. And it's something that, again, what I had the good fortune of working with a lot of business owners, and I did a lot of trial and error on what works and what doesn't. So when I put together my own, air quotes, package, what I'm doing is from 30 years of experience, I'm putting together a schedule that I know is going to work. And the discounts that they talk about with those packages, Kyle, are, they are discounted, but first you have to ask yourself off what? I mean, is it like sticker price with a car dealer or, what's it discounted off of? And generally, they're not any better deals than you can get if you just negotiate with the radio station on a bigger buy, and they're not giving you rates that they wouldn't normally give. I promise you that.
Right, absolutely.
So, yeah.
And so this kind of ties right into the next mistake number 3, which is?
Yeah, a lot of people, when they put together a radio schedule, and as I talked about, those packages generally involve large rotators. So the radio station, the mistake number 3 is buying rotators instead of buying day parts. And here's what I mean by that. So the radio station really loves to sell broad rotators. So 6A you buy a commercial that can run any time between the hours of 6A and 7P. Why does the radio station like that? Well, it gives them the freedom to move your commercial around to wherever they have room. So it helps them manage their sales inventory. The problem is radio is a frequency medium. If we could, again, remember one thing off of this, radio works on frequency. You have to hammer the same people over the head over and over and over again in order to sell your product to them. So by your commercial running one day at 6:03 in the morning, and the next day at 2:12 in the afternoon, and the next day at 10:35 in the morning, the next day at 6:48 in the evening, you're not creating any frequency because generally you're not hitting the same people over and over. So when I buy a schedule, I buy specific day parts, and you pay a little bit more. The trade-off with those rotators are you do get a little bit better deal. You get a little bit lower price, but it heck, I don't care if it's 50%. If it doesn't work, then it's not worth whatever lower price you're selling. I mean, you're buying it for. So I buy specific day parts. I'll put 2 spots in the morning, 2 spots in the midday, and 2 spots in the afternoon, and I'll narrow the day parts, 7A to 9A, 11 to 1P to catch the lunch crowd, and maybe 3P to 6P to catch the going home crowd. It's a much more effective way of catching that same audience over and over and over than those rotators.
Yeah, and I was recently on another podcast talking about how the little guys can compete with the big guys, and generally what we say with that is you have to own that space that you're in. So even if it's just one neighborhood that you're marketing to, you can if you're just a single guy operation, you can compete with the giants if you just focus on that one neighborhood. And I think that's the same thing you're getting across here when it comes to radio, that you have to own essentially that segment of radio and have that repeat that you are that big guy. So even if you're maybe a smaller home improvement company that doesn't have the budget of some of the bigger, almost national brands now that are out there, in that time slot to that listener group, you can certainly own that space. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
If you hit that one person that, and we're all creatures of habit. We're all listening to the radio as we brush our teeth in the morning about the same time, and we're all driving home at about the same time listening to the same radio station. So if you're there every day or 3 or 4 times a week over and over and over, they think you're a lot bigger than you really are. And you're absolutely right, Kyle. It's owning that space.
Awesome. And so kind of tying into these last 2 mistakes is mistake number 4.
Yeah, and that I titled that buying radio schedules that don't work. And then I thought, well, that's a little bit too broad. So really what I mean by that is you buy a schedule that generates too little frequency over too short a time frame, and your ad just really isn't heard by the same people over and over and over. So again, the biggest mistakes I see is business owners will buy, that again, they're a little bit anxious about getting into this radio advertising thing, and it is a pretty decent sized budget figure. And then they buy too few commercials, and they put them over too few of weeks and too broad a rotation. Again, back to that previous mistake of buying broad rotators, and it just doesn't work. And one of my favorite sayings, a sales trainer a long time ago said to me is, you guys remember the 7 dirty words of radio. And, anybody old enough to remember George Carlin can remember his 7 dirty words. And, well, it's not, there's a new one that I can repeat over your podcast. So you can breathe a sigh of relief, Kyle. I'm not going to say those. But the 7 dirty words of radio are, I tried it once, it didn't work. And as a radio rep, we would hear that over and over and over. And I'm sure a lot of the business owners listening can identify with that. Yeah, I tried radio. It failed miserably. I feel like I threw my money away. I'm not going to go back and try it again. I mean, it's kind of definition of insanity kind of thing. But the way to make it work is really just consistency. If you have these schedules and you do it regularly with a predictable boringness. I always say the first person to get sick of a radio schedule and a radio ad is the business owner, the guy paying or the gal paying for it. And you want to focus on reaching those same people over and over and over again, rather than trying to shotgun your approach and, buy 3 different stations and only run, 8 spots a week, but you feel like, I've got to reach this station, and I got to reach these country people, and I got to reach these adult contemporary people, and I want to be on the news talk station. And you got to focus, and concentrate your forces at one specific point of the front and attack. Little Sun Tzu war theory for you there.
Yeah, and I have a thought on that too. Just remember back from my media purchasing days and buying radio for a company that I was at, that most of the radio stations, and certainly you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that they usually have multiple stations under their umbrella. And what I tend to find when they were trying to put packages together is that they always, included in the stations that you probably shouldn't have been on anyways, because it didn't really reach who you were trying to. But because I'm assuming their sales manager's like, well, we got to fill up this station also. And so,
You're absolutely correct.
And so instead of just taking those, let's call it 1,000 commercials and dumping them all into one station that reaches your group over and over and over and over again, now they got these all spread out between 6 different stations. And I think that's where they fall into schedules that don't work and rotators and all that kind of stuff. But I think for the average, home improvement company, that's a lot for them to look at schedules and really know what will and will not, and just to really, and I think that's where, using someone like you that already has the expertise and has these things figured out can really, help jumpstart somebody, to that. So.
Yeah, and I look at it this way too. I mean, you can be successful by using an account rep at a radio station that's experienced and knowledgeable and understands, and again, I have to stress, understands how to create results using the medium. But short of that, and there's, everyone, I believe that these radio stations are all good and well-intentioned people. I don't think there's anyone, trying to get one over on the business owners. But a lot of times they're just poorly trained, or they just don't have the experience or knowledge of how to create results. There's media professionals. And you talked about the person that you were, you dealt with that wanted you to brand, and let's brand it. Let's brand ourselves out of business, like you said. There's media professionals that have no clue how to make this work. They just do the same stupid things that they were trained to do when they were new in the business, and they just keep repeating them because they think that's the right way. Some professional help for someone that understands how to use the medium to generate results. We don't give a whip about generating rating points or generating a cost per point. We want the phone to ring, and that's where we have to be focused on whether it's an account rep that you're buying through or a media person or an agency or something, focused on making the phone ring. And I hate to say it, unfortunately, in that industry or in the media industry, it's as rare as hen's teeth, as my grandpa used to say. It's really difficult to find people that are there to generate results.
I agree. And coming into the next mistake is certainly something that I see as technology has changed, and radio stations, are now competing against, different streaming companies, different ways, satellite radio, different ways that consumers can hear and listen. Now, podcasts are becoming really popular. And so mistake number 5 is?
The mistake number 5 is buying what I call add-ons, and what's termed in the industry as add-ons, that really don't do anything to generate phone calls. So you're absolutely right. Radio companies have discovered that there's all this money being spent in digital marketing, and they're getting in on the action, which is okay, but they're getting in on the action. They're throwing these useless things in that, create impressions, but they're not causing the phone to ring. And don't get me wrong, obviously digital, I'm not going to be one of those people who say, yes, this internet thing is a fad, Kyle, it's going to pass. Clearly digital advertising plays a major role in any healthy media plan. However, a lot of times these account reps aren't exactly digital marketing experts, and they're going to want to throw in, streaming advertising for $3 a spot. And, if you spend $500, then, or actually they sell by the impression, which is worse. That's a whole nother podcast. But they throw in these extras that it's just kind of one of those, as a business owner, you're like, yeah, okay, sure, fine, let's do that, because I know I need to be doing some digital, so this sounds good. My advice, don't buy it. Buy radio from radio people, and buy TV from TV people, and hire yourself a really good digital agency and let them take care of your digital plan. These tile ads and the streaming ads and so on and so forth. Let me tell you, I haven't had much luck in making them work, and I haven't heard a whole lot of people that are like, yeah, I ran this banner ad on the radio station's website, and I got 40 phone calls last month off of it. It's crazy. We just need to leave that alone, focus on buying radio from radio people, negotiate your best deal for your on-air schedule, and then ask them, before you sign, you're holding the pen in your hand, you're about to touch the piece of paper and sign it, and then you look at them and you say, well, hey, can I get a bonus duplicate schedule on your stream? Or what kind of banner ads can you give me to go along with this as a bonus or added value? Or, hey, can I get 50% of these of my value that I'm spending with you, can I get that back in like news, weather, traffic sponsorships? Radio is the most negotiable product in the world, in my opinion, and it's really, really easy to get these little add-ons when you're buying a radio schedule. So that would be my advice: is don't buy these add-ons, negotiate them into the contract.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, the worst they can say is no, right? I mean, so.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And Kyle, I work with a good story to exemplify this. I work with a siding dealer down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and when he came to me, I noticed a lot of his radio buys that he did have these on here, and I said, "Now, is this producing leads or sales for you?" He said, "Well, I don't think so, but it just seems like I should be doing it." I'm like, "No, okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to drop all these. We're going to get them out of here. I'm going to refer you to a good digital agent." And we focused everything that we were doing onto radio. And I mean, last year, again, phenomenal year. I think he told me he did $750,000 in radio lead sales. And that's all from kind of cleaning the junk out of his spending budget and putting it towards, something productive, which is radio ads.
Sure. Absolutely. And I know back in my, buying radio days that there were a few of those extra things, that did work out for us. For example, on, their website got a lot of traffic on it. And, we were able to put like our sweepstakes, advertisement on
Right.
there. And, at the time, a lot of people are going to their website, and that certainly, a form fill, will take it. But that certainly alone, getting it as an add-on that, they're throwing in essentially for free because you've already negotiated. And as you said, certainly helps that ROI a lot more than them putting it in there and charging you for it. So
Without a doubt. And they will always, even though, the radio stations that deal with me know that I'm kind of an old radio hound. They know I've been around. I understand the inside of a radio station. I've tried to pull all the tricks they try to pull. They'll still try to pitch me, adding on digital to my clients. And in 12 years, I have not said yes a single time. And I would just advise people to do the same.
awesome. So it sounds like they can use the phone script that we practiced before of just no.
That's right.
Works
Our
well
role
with
play script, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's bringing us to the last and final mistake, number 6, which I think is one of the biggest ones, and that is?
Yeah, it's not having a good system of measurement in place. So the clients that I deal with, which are really that have the most sophisticated systems of measurement in place, always are the happiest clients that I deal with. They're the ones that see the results of their marketing. Look, I get it. If I was writing that big check every month, and I'm like, well, did we get anything off this? I mean, you could have gotten if you're not measuring, you could have gotten 40 or 50 leads. You could have, gotten $100,000 in sales off radio, but if you're not measuring it, you don't know. So it still feels like you're just taking $100 bills and throwing them up into the wind. So the clients that are the most satisfied with their marketing plan are the ones that are really, really, really they really measure with that's a big deal, and it's part of their culture. And the inverse is also true. The people who do the least amount of measuring or don't measure are generally unsatisfied with their marketing. In the old days, we just had to trust Sally at the front desk when the person called in to say, "How did you hear about us?" And sometimes when Sally was having a good day, she remembered, and sometimes when Sally was having a bad day, she didn't. And it was very inconsistent and very difficult to do. Rarely are you going to get a phone call where someone calls up and says, "Mr. Powers, I just wanted to let you know, I heard your commercials on WXYZ, and I think they're fantastic, and I heard one today, and that's why I called you." I'm saying that the rarely will say that unprompted. So what I recommend that everybody does, and there's a gamut of doing it, but you can be as low tech as making it a multi-touch system where the person who answers the phone asks, "How did you hear about us?" The salesperson asks, "How did you hear about us?" The installer, when they're finishing up the job, says, "Now, how did you hear about us?" And the quality control person that follows up says, "Now, tell us again how you." A multi-touch system where multiple people are responsible for asking, how did you hear about our company, is a really, really, and you can do that all the way up to a high tech. I know there's apps out that, have people go ahead and fill out the Google review or the Angie's List review right there on the app. One of my favorite is, these websites like callsource.com, where they'll assign you a unique phone number. And, believe it or not, people still hear a phone number on the radio and call that phone number. I know this is a fact. So although a thing like CallSource isn't 100% foolproof, it will give you an idea of the number of people that are calling that number, and they're only hearing it or seeing it on radio or TV or in your direct mail or something. But you have to have some kind of measuring stick to see how your marketing's doing. And even a system like MarketSharp, which I know is pretty ubiquitous in the industry, and will allow you to track leads from call in, and you can monetize that investment all the way down to the sale. So with all of my clients, I'll sit down at the end of the month and we'll go over, how many leads did we get? How many sales did we get off that? We'll assign a cost per lead, cost per sale, cost of marketing percentage. We're able to run all of these analytics, and allows us to be much more efficient with where we're putting our money, rather than, kind of the hope and pray system.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more that having the tracking systems in place, whether they're the baseline, just having your people ask all the way through, the process of the customer. We at Tony Hody Training Consulting have our brand ambassador program that's doing really well for clients. Is simply a marketer going back after the job's installed, taking some pictures, getting reviews, repeat, referral, radius, and all that kind of stuff. But one of the questions I like to ask on that visit is, hey, how did you hear about us? What brought you to us? But I also like the side of, a lot of times you'll ask that customer maybe on the phone, hey, how'd you hear about us? And they'll say something like TV. Oh, I saw your ad on TV, and you're not running TV.
Exactly.
Right. And so that's the thing there too. So as you mentioned before, I think we could have a whole nother podcast just talking about tracking leads and really figuring out where your marketing dollar is going. I believe it was Henry Ford that said something about he knows half his marketing doesn't work. He just wish he knew what half, right?
Yeah, doesn't know what half.
Yeah, exactly. And so getting in, on that is I putting those steps that you said, whether it's low tech or high tech, to figure that out, but also realizing it's still not a perfect science, and that you have to kind of think about what can you attribute possibly to that. But also, I think a lot of people fall in the trap that radio salesperson, they like to, and I mean TV, any of them are kind of guilty of this, where they want to try to say, well, you may not know where it's coming from, and that's okay, because you just keep spending money with us, and all's going to be well.
And that is absolutely, again, it's that media person is not wanting to be accountable for results because they've never been accountable for results before, or they don't know what they're doing. So the only feedback they've ever gotten from their clients are negative. Like, best case scenario, I don't know if it's working. Worst case scenario, I haven't had a phone call in 3 months off this thing. It's terrible. So they hide from the accountability by saying, oh, you can't track it. I say, again, bull. You can track it. Radio's very trackable. If done right, people will say, I heard your ad on the radio when you ask them. Sometimes if done right, they'll say, if you're using a personality, like I've got this kitchen and bath remodeler in Columbus, Ohio, and they're using Glenn Beck as to do their commercials. And he said, you wouldn't believe the number of times people are sitting there writing me a $10,000 down payment for the job, going, well, if Glenn Beck says you're a good company, then that's the kind of company I want to do business with. So they can track it if it's done right. That's a lie. Now, it's not perfect. Again, somebody hears the radio ad, they see the direct mail piece, and then they sit down and they Google, window replacement in Cleveland, Ohio, and they find the name of the business, and they're like, oh, yeah, I've heard them on the radio. They call in and you say, well, how'd you hear about us? Well, I Googled you. That's how. So you're never going to get it perfect, but you can get enough of an idea to allow you to manage the process.
Absolutely. And Richard, it kind of brings us to our last segment of the show here called Power's Powerful Points. And what powerful points do you have to kind of sum up this whole episode here on getting radio done correctly?
Yeah, well, basically 3 points, Kyle. And I think I do want people to remember this when going through it. And the first one is there's absolutely no foolproof, surefire way to get guaranteed results every time. And if someone ever comes to you and says, I guarantee I can get you this return on your investment or that, just run away because they're lying to you. And so I always liken it to I like to play blackjack when I go to Las Vegas. And if there's any blackjack players out there, the system of when to hit and when to stay, and it based on what the dealer's showing, that increases your odds of winning to the most you can possibly get them to. The house still has a slight advantage, but it's your best odds possible. So what I say is when you do radio and TV and any advertising correctly, it increases your odds beyond just hope and pray. And so that's kind of what I tell people with that. Secondly, if you eliminate these mistakes that I talk about, you're going to increase the efficiency of your advertising investment, no question. So again, it's all about increasing those odds and making it more likely to make it work. And then finally, just be careful who you trust. Again, there's a lot of well-meaning, good people in the radio and media business, nice people, but you have to be careful about who you're going to trust with that investment because they're all there to sell advertising, and just very, very few of them know how to produce predictable, regular results. They don't as I always say, very few of them know how to use the medium. They know how to sell the medium, but very few of them know how to use the medium.
Absolutely. I think those are some great points. And Richard, if the listeners were interested into speaking to you more about radio and the services you provide, how might they get a hold of you?
Well, again, the name of my business is First Person Advertising. Website is pretty simple, firstpersonadvertising.com. And then you can email me at richard@firstpersonadvertising.com. And first is spelled out with an F. And shoot me an email. I'm happy to give a kind of a free upfront consultation to anyone who wants to talk about this. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about it. I love talking about it. To use a term in the home improvement business, a free, no obligation consultation. I don't expect anything. I really do love helping, and I got a heart for the home improvement industry. 100% of my clients are home improvement people, and I just have a heart for that industry, and really want to help. And if there's something that I can do to help with their media plans and advertising plans, we can talk about it at that point too.
And Richard, I assume I'll be seeing you at LeadCon 2021 here that we're going to be having.
Absolutely, looking forward to that. Listen, I'm sitting here, and I'm not up in the Great White North like you, but I'm sitting here in Kansas City, and I'm looking at 3 inches of snow on the ground and temperatures that haven't been out of the 20s in 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm looking forward to Orlando, Florida, Mr. Powers, and so. When I was a happy man when I got that email from you. Looking forward to sharing with, listening to people at LeadCon. It was a great experience the last time I was there, and man, I hope to see a lot of people there.
Yeah, and for the listeners, absolutely, we've had a tremendous response of people signing up and roaring to go to get down there. So not only to, learn about, again, what you discussed, the mistakes that people make in radio and how not to make them and actually get a return on your radio and investment. But I mean, the entire LeadCon is just that, how to generate leads cost effectively and to get profit into your business. And so again, I hope to see a lot of people there. And Richard, I thank you so much for your time today and look forward to seeing you in Orlando.
I look forward to it, Kyle, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for listening to the Lead Gen Leaders Podcast. For a free consultation on how Tony Hoty Training and Consulting can assist with your home remodeling business, please visit TonyHoty.com. That's TonyHoty.com. Thank you for listening.